Here's a fun one for tonight. Masahiro Sakurai, the king of Smash Brothers, has apparently warned of unsustainable game development. And the solution, he says, is generative AI as a key to the industry's future. Something, die a hero, live long enough to become a villain, you're the quote. Now I guess I should be completely transparent about this one. The source of this comes from Yahoo Japan, and I do not read Japanese. But Google Translate does, and Google Translate apparently is lying. At least, that's what the pro-Nintendo people are saying online, and assuming that this was all misquoted. But since nobody provided an actual translation, and everybody wants to read it just in the way that they think it sounds in their mind to make Sakurai sound good, all I can really do is report on what Yahoo Japan says. Because let me tell you, the way that Google translated it does not sound good for the future of the large Nintendo franchise. So just quickly breaking down what was said in the article, at least in the Google translated version of the article, it starts off with a reflection on Sakurai's irreplaceable contributions to gaming, straight up comparing him to Hayao Miyazaki, both as creators whose work is deeply personal and cannot easily be replicated. But the industry is shifting towards hyper-specialized segmented roles that make it hard for generalists, visionaries, and creators to emerge. And given the rising costs and unsustainable scale, game development is increasingly seen as time-consuming and much more difficult to manage. Which means the only viable solution to rising development of complexity, according to the article, as said by Masahiro Sakurai, may very well be generative AI, which would drastically improve workflow efficiency. The exact translated quote is that they ask him, how do you see the future of the gaming market? And he says, to be honest, it's dark to see what's coming. I think that if you try to make a large-scale game like the ones we have now, it's too time-consuming and unsustainable. I feel like we can't continue like this. But at the moment, the only effective solution I can think of is generative AI. I feel that we have reached a stage where we must change our schemes, such as by using generative AI to improve work efficiency. I think that this will be an era in which only companies that can adapt to this change will survive. I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound like he's being reluctant or nervous at all. I'm seeing people push this as if he's going, oh yeah, this is so sad, we're gonna have to rely on AI. But that's not what it reads like at all. It reads more like he's worried about how big these games are, and he's worried about how intense and difficult it is to make more games at such a high demand. And the saving grace, the angelic touch from above, the solution for all of game developers' issues comes in the form of artificial intelligence of the Generative brand. They then go on to discuss the indie market, and he says while indie games offer creative freedom, the sheer volume of releases, 10,000 plus per year, creates discoverability issues, which means to success in the indie world, it requires a mix of hard work, perfectionism, and sheer luck. Now, I don't think I need to teach you guys why this train of thought is bad for the gaming industry, but maybe it would be fun to go through a few reasons. For starters, when you rely too much on AI, we have a loss of visionary creators, just like Sakurai and Miyazaki, which means innovation will suffer. Personal vision, holistic design choices, all that's out the window, it becomes factory-like. All of a sudden, it's less of an art and more about logistics and management. The problem is that AAA development cycles are so long and expensive that they're just no longer viable for many studios. And instead of breaking things down and taking it at a slower rate, finding more passion projects, smaller projects to push out, what seems to be happening is experimentation is being discouraged, and all of a sudden we find ourselves relying more on sequels, remakes, and formulaic, safe bets. And I know what you're thinking. AI could help with costs. It could help with that stress. It could help with optimization. Cut a few corners here and there, nobody will notice, right? That's how it starts. But then before you know it, everything's homogenized. We lose human touch, we lose the nuance. And at that point, you can't even defend the developers because all of the developers are fired. But I think that's just the reality of where things are moving towards. We already see it in front of our eyes, even without the implementation of AI, or rather with the minimal surface level implementation of AI, which will only grow over time. The industry is shifting towards favoring companies that can adapt technologically and financially rather than artistically. Passion-driven developers are all pushed to the side. Big publishers are less willing to take risks. Fewer innovative and niche games are greenlit. And in between all of this giant AAA slop, the sad reality is that many great games never gain any traction, which sadly and inevitably will lead to more and more future developers becoming discouraged from even trying. Quite frankly, I don't even know if I fault Sakurai for saying this, but it does hurt a lot more coming from him. Although he's the same guy that said they were taking away cutscenes from the next Smash Bros. Game because people were watching their cutscenes for Brawl online. But still, this isn't a Sakurai problem, this isn't a Nintendo problem, this is a vast gaming problem. The article is pretty short, it's pretty straightforward, but it paints a pretty bleak and realistic picture of the gaming industry in transition. Innovation is still possible, but the growing complexities of economic pressures and the inevitable over-reliance on AI-related tools threatens to marginalize the very type of creators who made gaming special to begin with. Both large-scale and indie development will face existential challenges. And unfortunately, we're gonna see an environment where adaptability outweighs the artistry. We're living through a massive change. Old models will no longer work, and the solutions, like generative AI, may come with their own devastating consequences. Think of all of those games you grew up with that just felt like they had passion, that they had a soul, that you just vibed with. Those games that you don't even need to play to go through a nostalgia trip on. You just gotta think about the title of the game, and you remember that day. And you remember those feelings, and you remember why you connected with that title. How the developer was able to make a title that you were so entrenched in. Now, I would personally never say that that's gonna completely disappear from the industry. Not so abruptly, at least. But it's just gonna get buried beneath layers upon layers of tech, market pressure, and just systemic dysfunction. The gaming industry has never been larger than it is right now, and it never has been growing as quickly as it is right now. The hope is that it grows in the right direction, but the reality is that it's probably not. And I think if you've heard me speak about the industry for the past couple of months, you know that this is not really all that much of a surprise for me. If anything, assuming once again that Google did not make a mistake translating the intentions of the great Sakurai, I'm glad it came from his mouth. Because for people like me, there currently is nobody that better represents some of the best games that we love. Like if this was said by somebody at Sony, if it was said by somebody at Microsoft, or Ubisoft, or EA, Nintendo fans would quickly be like, well yeah, that's why I buy Nintendo, because Nintendo still has heart, it still has passion, it still cares about the player, because Nintendo developers are gamers. Even within the Nintendo sphere, if it was said by Miyamoto, they'd be like, well, he's old. You know, he doesn't really get it. He's just kind of on the outskirts and looking down. Furukawa, Doug Bowser. Those guys are just marketing presidents. One of them's an accountant. They don't really know games. They're just, you know, just talking. They don't really matter that much. But nay, it comes straight from the king, the infallible, the creator of the strongest pink puffball that the world has ever seen. Masahiro Sakurai. Yeah, sorry, that was kind of lame, but I'm leaving that in there. But anyway, yeah, this sucks. I got nothing else to say. It just sucks. This is gonna be like when CGI first came into the movie industry, and at first we're all like, ooh, this looks cool. And then just slowly over time, we're gonna be like, somebody please, for the love of God, put on a costume. I am sick of the shininess. I no longer feel immersed in the games that I am playing that involve jumping on turtles, murdering mushroom people. And if I don't feel immersed when I am trying to save Princess Peach, then how could I even enjoy this platformer? Yeah, okay, I think I'm done now. I got some big videos coming up, by the way. I don't want to be that guy, but I am being that guy. But just really keep an eye on my channel. There's gonna be a pretty big video coming tomorrow, maybe the day after. This channel is about to make a change, and I think you'll like it. Or you'll hate it and unsubscribe. I suppose that's always the only two options that my viewers have. Alright, I'm ready to call it a night. Thanks for listening. I'll catch y'all on the next one.